My Jonsered 2171 cutter's edge. Yes, this is my most prized chainsaw. So what can I say about it right here in the moment? Jonsered chainsaws, to me, they absolutely represent a higher caliber. They absolutely represent a more refined and distinguished machine. Now, you may think that's funny and laughable, but you have your preferences of things as well. But this is what Sony is to electronics to a lot of people. Like them or dislike them, they are top tier. They are really highly regarded. Apple to computers, you know, is Jonsered to chainsaws. Does it perform better than all others? I don't think so. I just like it better. The colors are cool, red and black. Makes sense, right? You know, since when did orange make sense as a primary color for anything? Orange is a color that you use to accent, okay? You use orange on black to accent the black because it looks good. Yeah, you can use orange on white. That looks all right, but hey, that rhymes. Yeah, but orange and black, they complement each other well. I'm sorry, red and black, they complement each other well. There's nothing pretentious about it. It's just a simple saw with clean lines. And it also, to me, represents a time in which Jonsered was, in fact, the best chainsaws made. Or were, in fact. Because, you see, back before Electrolux picked up Jonsered, what seemed to be the case for me, and I've read things on forums and just little things here and there in ads and blah, blah, blah. I heard Spike, you know, Bob, talk about it on the A Fleet Command channel with Walt. And, you know, the quality in which the Jonsereds were made back in the 60s and 70s was very much inconducive of the company surviving. And that's why they were having problems. I think, I don't know anything. You know, all I can do is glean what I glean from certain conversations. You know, they don't produce a pamphlet telling you the true history of chainsaws. It's all just little bits and pieces that we put together in our minds. But they were producing saws of such high caliber that there's no way that they could sell them cheap and affordable. So therefore, they couldn't sell many units. And the other option would be to sell them cheaply and lose money. Any company is going to have a problem with that. So Electrolux scoops them up because they're a premier chainsaw manufacturer. Absolutely premier. Them and Partner as well, probably. I don't know nearly as much about Partner as I do Jonsered. But Electrolux scoops them up sometime in the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there. Electrolux snags them. Well, Jonsered and Partner started kind of commingling, making products throughout the 80s and into the 90s. But they also said, you know what, we're going to take the Husqvarna chainsaws and we're going to add our own touch to them and flair and make them better than Husqvarna. And this is true. This is real. You can pick up the Husqvarna 61, right? Husqvarna 61, and you take it and you get the Jonsered 625. They're the same saw, but with Jonsered little touches, it's better. Because I do believe on that saw right there, you already have the choke which engages your high idle. I think that might have been the first saw to do that. I'm not sure though. But it engages the high idle just by pulling the choke. and then when you push the choke in, it releases the choke, but your high idle is still on. Whereas Husqvarna, they stuck with their awkward little lock on the throttle that actually was on the top of the handle, all right? Jonsered didn't do that. They were, I think, the very first ones to move to a throttle lock whenever you choke it. Now, Steel may have been doing it, maybe have been doing it, but they had that awkward setup. So even if they were the first ones to do it, I think that their setup is just absolutely ridiculous. Who reaches for a light switch and turns it down in order to shut it, to turn it on? You know, you don't do that. You don't push up to turn it off, and you don't push down to turn it on. But anyways, that's a different thing. Jonsered has just always been the more polished. I've heard it said that it's like GMC to Chevrolet. It's like Lincoln to Ford. They're the same thing as Huskies, or they became the same thing as Huskies somewhere in the late 90s. They just straight up completely went to model for model. You had your Husqvarnas, and then you had your Jonsered in red. But before the late 90s, you could still get original Jonsered chainsaws, and they were very highly influenced by Partner in the 90s and throughout the 80s. And they're my favorite saw. They're my favorite brand. They're not the funnest brand. Funnest brand to me is Poland. But whenever I look at a saw and I go, I want the best chainsaw that I can get, it's going to say Jonsered on it. It's going to say Jonsered. This one specifically is the 2171 Cutter's Edge. Now what that means is the Cutter's Edge factory, I believe they're out in California, maybe Oregon. I can't be for sure on that. What they would do is they would get models. They probably got a good wholesale price on them. They would buy models from the factory, and then they would lightly modify them for firefighter duty. So that's why we have the big air filter sticking out of the top of it here. This is a uni filter because whenever I got the saw, it did not have the K&N filter that they normally come with, and I like this one better anyways. I could have bought a K&N filter that's like the ones that's on the Cutter's Edge, but I prefer this one. So aside from the air filter and the ability to breathe better because it's needed in the low oxygen environment that a firefighter may find themselves working in. But aside from that, there's no other modifications to this saw. It has not been ported. It has not had a base gasket delete. It has not even had a muffler mod. Not even so much as a muffler mod. This is a stock saw with the exception of this filter right here. And Cutter's Edge also had their own bar and chain that they would put on these things. That was they call it a bullet chain. It looks like a bullet. It looks like a 22 rifle bullet. But yeah, it's for cutting through shingles and cutting through the roofs and things. Whereas this one would dull immediately. That one, they're never really sharp, but they're blunt instruments that can pound through the roof. I've still got it, but I have no interest in putting it on. And it also has a momentary switch for the on-off. So this thing is always ready to fire. I don't have to touch the switch at all. It's ready to go. And the momentary switch, all it does is function to shut it off. So I love this saw. It's got the full wrap handle on it. Got a little place to hold my scrinch. But now don't ask me where I get this because it's from the Cutter's Edge factory. Yeah, it's got a place to hold the scrinch, got the full wrap handle. I normally keep a 28-inch Sugihara bar on it, and I very rarely use this because very rarely am I in wood big enough to require it, and I want to keep it nice. Now, it doesn't mean I don't want to modify it. I do need to go ahead and port and polish this, but basically, I've been waiting on this one. I don't think it needs to be ported and polished. It runs so good. It's such a good, strong saw for its size. But the big thing probably is I want to make sure that I nail down and learn my style of porting before I tackle this. So, you know, I'm pretty new to porting. At this point, I've ported a good handful of saws for sure. But with this one right here, I want to get it nailed down to what my likes are. You know, do I like a high revving saw? Do I like a torque saw? These things I want to figure out before I touch this because it's pristine. And so I don't know what videos you're going to see it go up against. I don't know. I mean, surely we're going to see it go up against the 441. Only makes sense, right? But I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if it's going to win or lose every one of its competitions. But what I do know is it's the best. It's the best small, large saw or big, medium-sized saw. I guess you would call it a medium-sized saw. I think it's the best that's ever been, you know. The Husqvarna 572, the steel 442, 462, 440, 044, everything, in my opinion, is trying to beat this. Some of them beat it by more power, sure, you know. Some of them beat it by lighter weight, probably, I don't know for sure. But as a whole package, if you're looking for a 70cc saw, in my opinion, there is nothing better than the original edition 372 XP, except for an original 372 XP with Jonsered branding and colors. This is the best. This is the king chainsaw, in my opinion. There are others that are faster. There are others that are lighter. There are others that probably do last longer, but that's a hard ask. This thing has great longevity. Fantastic. I mean, it's unheard of how just excellent they are. So they have very low low vibration as well. They're very smooth running saws. This is the bee's knees, the cat's meow. It's taking what was already the very best in its class to ever exist, in my opinion. And it's making it better because it is a Jonsered, it is red and it is black, it has full wrap handlebar, it has the upgraded air filter, and it's called a cutter's edge. This is the pinnacle of the 372 XP, in my opinion. And that is even taking into consideration the, 75cc saws, 76cc saws that got the larger 52 millimeter bore, the 370, did they call them 375? I'm drawing a blank. Maybe they're just I think they call them 375 XP. You know what I'm talking about. They got the larger bore cylinder. I still would take this over the 375. But not because this has more power. No, it's because this is cooler. It's cutter's edge, baby. And it's a Jonsered. I like to think that if James Bond was a lumberjack, he would most definitely choose the ultra refined Jonsered chainsaw to stroke his wood. I don't know if this is good news or if it's bad news because I'm an idiot. Or it's irrelevant news because that wasn't the problem anyways. I don't know. But, full disclosure here. So, I got my Walbro carb. This is my Jonsered 2171 carburetor. I put on the farm hack F372. If you watch the channel, you'll know that I could not get this dang thing to rev. It was like bad. It was crazy, right? Best I could ever make with this thing was in the cut. It was barely capable of pulling 9,000 RPMs, and that's in small cuts. It's like small pine. So this thing, it's been bad-mouthed by me a lot. But I know that there's a simple problem. I just have other things going on right now that I'm concentrating on. This one will be a future build for me, and it will literally be called the Farm Hack, because I'm gonna do all kinds of craziness to it, or at least that's the plan. But I'm getting that carburetor off to put back on my 2171 because I want to do a test with it with 36-inch bar. And I just saw something that may be the problem of why this thing never was capable of waking up. You see? That's my impulse line. That is definitely a kink in there. Definitely wasn't like that when I installed it, but you know, warmed up maybe. There was just enough line to kink up. So hopefully that's the problem, you know. But sad reality is I ain't checking it today. Sorry guys, it doesn't fit in with my plan. So I've got another carburetor that I'll be rebuilding and putting on this thing, and we'll test it out, and we'll have this footage to say, oh yeah, bright moment of knowledge right there. As of right now, I'm pulling that off, putting it back on my Jonsered 2171. Going to get a cut with that big 36-inch bar while everything is still fresh and I got this stuff going on. I think this will be the very last cut that I make on that log as far as for the test for the 36-inch bar, because the log is getting bigger, and there's a branch that's starting and everything, and so it's not going to be equal testing anymore. I'll still do cuts on it for sure, but not for this little semi-pseudo whack-off thing. Anyways, I'm back on this.